Okay, so I guess I started writing professionally when I was 15 and started out just doing poetry and fiction for many, many years. And when I met Sherm, I met him in, when was that?
1998?
1998, and he had a degree in history, and after we got married, just started writing history books together.
And let's see, how many months was that? Well, let's see, Insider's Guide, the first book we did for Globe-Pequot in 2000. When did we get that job? Like
A week after we got married.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've kind of been working on something on and off, except for when we were raising our 2 kids. Pretty much the whole time we've been married for 15 years now. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty early start for writing, or for at least professional writing. 15. How did you come to writing that early as what you wanted to do?
Well, I guess I had friends who were writers, and they said that actually I had friends who were in bands, and they said if I actually wanted to be a writer, I should start publishing stuff, and I took that as a challenge and just started sending stuff to magazines. Because I think I'd pretty much always just written for fun, and then I just had this huge stack of poetry, and like I said, I just took it as a challenge to send it to magazines to see if it would get published.
So what was your record like in the early days?
Probably 1% of everything I sent off.
It's not your average 15-year-old who
Yeah.
can keep sending stuff off with just the postage costs alone.
Oh gosh. You know, every year for Christmas and my birthday, my dad would get me a box of envelopes and a roll of stamps. That was pretty much the standard present to give me.
I think we were lucky to be in an environment, and you did more stuff that published a lot more than I did when I was younger. But we were lucky to be in an environment when that was kind of the post-punk thing in America, right? So there's fanzines everywhere. So there's it was kind of on our level, kind of, I don't know, like old beat style. You know what I mean? Just kind of rambling, crazy, fun sort of stuff, crazy, over the edge, and that was available for kids. I mean, there's still really strong zine scene in the Twin Cities, and I know my daughter enjoys that. She's 12 now, but I think it was incredible back then. You could go to a newsstand, and besides the weekly newspapers, there's you go to a record store, there's 6-7 free zines there where you could pick up, like you worked at Squealer, and it was kind of a long-running one, and there's Cake, and there's so many.
Yeah, I remember, my son, who's now 32, got his start in publishing a zine and contributing to zines. Was that your start also, or did you want publications and things with stiff covers and editorial boards?
It was pretty much like half and half, I'd say. It was like I did stuff with a lot of punk scenes. Like New York had a huge huge punk scene, so I had a lot of stuff published on the East Coast, and then probably the other half of university publications, and a lot of science fiction and horror magazines. They were all publishing poetry and fiction back then, so I just sent to all of them.
Yeah, there were so many too, right? I mean, I don't know. I even got one of my friends' bands. Must have been the year I graduated, so it's like '93. I got them in interviewing Maximum Rock and Roll, which was kind of then the extreme left wing of punk rock music then, you know what I mean? They were way too doctrinaire for me eventually, but it was kind of cool, I guess, to have it in a publication like that. I thought much better 10 years earlier before they became very doctrinaire and were kind of exclusionary, almost very politically correct. I don't know. The '90s was a period where I think the music scene you know, it's very, you know, there's very much the straight edge thing, and there's a lot of divisions, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's very PC. Doesn't seem like it's like that as much now, so it's good.
So, may I ask how you met?
Oh, at a party in Northeast.
Yeah. like what did the guy say from the Northeast
In
neighborhood?
a church bar or party.
Yeah. We met up on Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
At Logan Park, at your friend Leo Kelbs, who
was
he's a
publishing
publisher now in New York, I guess.
Yeah, he was running Squealer magazine, and
Mm-hmm.
I was the non-music editor of Squealer. So I used to go to parties at his house all the time.
And I don't even remember what show were we at the.
Francis Gum and Video Nasty.
Is that who was playing?
Yeah.
My roommates were playing there at the Terminal Bar up there on East Hennepin, in Northeast.
So, had you published also then before that?
Just very little. Like I said, that Maximum Rock and Roll thing was kind of a, you know, just a little thing. I don't think we got anything for it. And I don't know. I wrote on my own. I played music more then, but not, you know, I wasn't very successful at that either. I don't know. Interest in the arts, but yeah, I don't know.
So, how did this jump from occasional zine publication and poetry to history publication, presumably for money?
Right.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Incrementally, I think, right?
Well, in my
Yeah.
in my I don't know what late mid-20s, I started doing free. I mean, you know, like on the internet, with the big internet boom and everything, there's so many online magazines that were publishing like interviews with bands and stuff, and I was already like obsessed with music, so I just started. I found out that these places were paying like $600-700 for an interview with a band that I could do in about 15 minutes. So that was my introduction to journalism, and then after doing a bunch of online stuff, I started writing for Pulse of the Twin Cities and Siren and Cake and City Pages, and pretty much.
There's various times too where you get paid good money on that kind of stuff, and I don't know, just the path or the trajectory of publishing. Remember, the economy would go bad and they go bankrupt, and you're supposed to get $600, and they'd settle for like $5 or something like that on some of that stuff. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know, because there's all kinds of speculation on what was going to go on in the internet and how it was going to work and how money was going to work, I think, and how much money they were going to have. You know, I think some people went overboard and some people have a sense of where it was going to be, I suppose. Right?
But simultaneously, I've also been running an indexing editing business out of my house where, like, you know, an indexer is someone who puts indexes together for books. So every 6 months I would write to publishers and include my resume and say, are you looking for indexers, or are you looking for someone to do freelance editing? And pretty much right after we got married, I went ahead and I sent all my resume out because there was time to do it again. And Globe-Pequot wrote back and said, well, we're looking for someone to write a book on Twin Cities. Do you think you could do that? And Sherman and I had just gotten married, and he had his degree in history and pretty much knew everything.
It was work for hire, and it was back then. You could actually, you know, it's better money than it is today, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, so
money up front.
So anyway, we said we would do it, and that was the first book.
So how was it? I mean, you'd written a lot by yourself. How was this collaboration thing?
We survived.
Yeah.
You're still married.
The first one I think was difficult. You know, that was very difficult.
It was 4 months to write everything about the Twin Cities, including shopping and dining and road trips and.
Yeah, I don't think we were born with silver spoons in our mouths or anything, because most of the stuff we've had was kind of, you work hard and it's fallen, and like somebody else, you know what I mean, was supposed to do it, and they still got a deadline, and they go, oh, well, if you can do this in 4 months, it's yours. It's like, okay, yeah, we can do it, because we're pretty good at keeping to a schedule, I guess. You get mad for a while, you throw the papers on the floor, and you get up and go back to work, you know.
So how do you do a complete guide to the Twin Cities?
You try.
In 4 months.
Yeah.
How do you do
try.
it?
Well,
What's the research process like?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the research we'd already done too. I mean, most of the restaurants in it we'd already gone to, and most of the places we'd already gone to. There's still like a lot of places that we've been meaning to go to, and it was a good excuse to go.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's kind of like, let's see, I was 30, that's a culmination of a life's work, kind of in a scatterbrain, crazy, all over the place sort of way, because it attempts to cover so much, and whether or not that's successful, you try your best, but you know, they kept publishing it, what, for
like
15
7
years
editions.
or something, so I don't know, because
Yeah.
it was, what was it, like 460 pages or something like that? It was huge. I don't know, they just kept on cutting it back, and then eventually they got somebody else to come in there and they put his name on there and changed a few entries. So I don't know. I'm not, those books are what they are, I guess, but it's work, it's practice. You know, a lot of stuff with writing is just getting a system, right? Sticking to it and doing it day in and day out. I don't know. You might not be the most talented person in the world, but you try your best, you work hard, and that's what you do.
So what kind of hours were you putting in on this?
Yeah, writing is really like, it's a 24-hour-a-day job. You know, it's like when you're not doing it, you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about what you're going to do when you actually get to sit down and do it.
No, most of these jobs, it's like, I don't know, you know, you work your day job, you know, your day job doing indexing and stuff like that, and I'd work my day job 40 hours a week, or maybe sometimes if you're lucky you take a little bit of time off to really go at it, but
yeah, it's just
you know,
any time you can sit down.
it depends on what your schedule is. Like on the Northeast book, it was, let's see, come home from work then at 10:30, work until 1 in the morning, if I could get myself to go to bed, maybe 2, and get up with my wife, with Holly and my daughter, and take her to the bus stop at 7:30 in the morning. Well, get up at 7:30. She'd leave at 8 and go get the newspaper, read the newspaper, do some exercise so you don't have a heart attack or anything like that, and then go back to work until lunchtime, and then eat lunch and do some editing, and then grab your paperwork and take it to work with you and look it over on break time.
So this was for both of you essentially a second job throughout the whole time.
While this one was being written too, I also was working on the new edition for Music Theory for Dummies too, so that was like, that was another book that had to be written at the same time as this one.
And that's an onerous kind of technical writing sort of thing. I mean, that's, and like the walking book it's really fun in some aspects because we got to take our daughter when she's 4 on all these walks, so that's really great. But on the other side, there was the technical writing aspect that you have to do all these directions, and it's, I don't know, after a while, it kind of drives you crazy. It was fun writing the free kind of just description and writing about stuff and going places and seeing things, but boy, the turn left, the turn right after a while, I don't know. Tires you out. You don't want to get people lost, right?
You don't want them complaining about being lost.
That's the template. I mean, we didn't come up with, you know, they had a successful template and they wanted us to write it, and we said, sure, we'll do it, and we had lots of fun doing it, but I don't know, I'm not much of a technical writer. We've done more of that like we did on
So how much could you kind of personalize these or make them your own, and how much was it kind of a matter of filling in content to an outline that was established by tradition for these kinds of books?
I'd say this one probably follows the template less than most of the things we've done.
Yeah.
Well, let's run
Free
through the
expression.
list just to kind of get a sense of the range of things.
basically
you've done.
what I did anyways, and what I think you did too, is when we got a job to write a book, they would, you know, you get a copy of somebody else's book that was supposed to be a fine example or an exemplar of that, and then you would look it over and see what they had in there, And then basically, right, I think we'd itemize like way back to the insiders, chapters on everything they covered, and then if we thought there was anything specific to where we live, like for example, if you got a book from San Diego, they're not going to have anything about winter sports, recreation, and activities, but we might add something on that, or a chapter, or whatever. And then you pursue that and do the research on it, and then we'd assign who was writing, you know, individual chapters, right? We split it up as much as you did more of that than I did, because I think it was crazy, but most of the other books have been more equitable, I guess, in splitting things up, but yeah.
Could you just list the books you've done so we get a sense of the range of things?
Oh yeah. Well, together we've done Insider's Guide to the Twin Cities, Walking Twin Cities, Northeast Minneapolis.
We're writing a Stillwater one.
We're doing a Stillwater book right now, and then I've got a couple of poetry books out, and Music Theory for Dummies, Music Composition for Dummies, Guitar All-in-One for Dummies, and Piano All-in-One for Dummies, and then a novel.
Wow. What an output.
And
what a range.
And the thing is, you publish, you know, so all that gets published, but in actuality, it's like, I don't know, how many files do you have? I mean, I think that's the big thing about writing that they don't tell people, right? It's like, I don't know, how much do you have written that maybe you'll never ever get, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, I don't have the time, but I write short stories, and I've written a novel on the side and stuff like that. I don't know. The writing process is more fun to me than the time that I have to do to try to get something out. So it's like, I'll write it and then just put it aside, and then hopefully there's another day when you have the time and or money to work on it, because it's like, you know, it's like, you want to get it perfect, you're going to have to rewrite it probably 6-7 times, and at that point it's like, I don't know, I got another idea going and you want to work on that, so. And that's between books, you know.
The nice thing about nonfiction is it's almost always just has a publisher, or the publisher contacts you and says, can you write this? So that already has a publisher. Finding a publisher for the fiction and the nonfiction, or fiction and poetry and stuff there's just as much time finding a publisher for that as writing it.
And it sounds like what you really like to do is write.
Oh yeah, yeah, writing's fun. Mm-hmm. I love writing.
Are these guidebooks fun?
Yeah. Well, like for Music Theory for Dummies, I had piano lessons for the whole time I was growing up. My grandmother was a piano teacher, my dad's a musician, but I'd never had a chance to like sit down and think about the entire 2,000-year history of the creation of the current music theory system we use. So it gives you a chance to sit down and just like totally lose yourself in a subject, which is wonderful. And so many people don't get to do that. You just obsess about something to the point where it's like there's nothing else you're allowed to think about. That's such a fun thing to get to do.
Now was it the same way with, say, the Northeast Minneapolis book, that you obsessed about it?
Oh yeah, we did so many days of driving around, taking pictures and looking at stuff and pointing out buildings and saying, oh, this building is named after this person, and gosh, your kids just get so sick of hearing that.
You kind of have to integrate it into all aspects of your life. So it's like, to work, I bicycle commute, so I would, you know, downtown, but I go through Old St. Anthony, so like every day when I'm riding my bike to work in the summer, at least, you know, besides the November, sometimes December, you know, January, February, and then all the time it's not possible always for me, but you think about all these things you've been reading, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of cool to be surrounded by history, because if you go through Old St. Anthony on the way there, and then for exercise too, it's like, I don't know, just to burn stuff off, I had all kinds of routes where I go through Northeast, because it's, you know, exercise stimulates the brain, so you're thinking and thinking and thinking, and then, you know, it's like a lot of people have, they're always claiming that they have a writer's block or something. I don't have a writer's block if I'm thinking about things all the time, and when I'm at work I'm thinking about things, and, you know, sometimes you have to keep a piece of paper in your pocket, write stuff down, because, oh yeah, I gotta look that up, I gotta think about that, or whatever, so.
I live in a historic neighborhood, North Minneapolis. not having a degree in history and not having gotten that bug quite. I wander past all these different houses, often from very different periods,
Right.
asking, well, what's going on here, and what's the story, and truthfully, I don't know how to begin. Although I guess 30 seconds thought would tell me something. But how do you research this sort of thing?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, the Minnesota Historical Society is an amazing collection of research materials available. You can check them out just online too. They have like so many magazines and thousands of newspapers and,
they even
pictures
have
of artifacts.
They even have house histories. You can go look at Sanborn Insurance. Just a plain house anywhere in the neighborhood. You can go look at the Sanborn and insurance maps, or not maps, but what's the maps technically, that they would use for insurance purposes, and they actually show when there was additions and all kinds of stuff, and everything is going on in the neighborhood. I mean, it's incredibly detailed and interesting.
And the Hennepin County Library System has a whole lot of resources too. They have a lot of old maps you can look at online or in person, and books and photographs. And you could pick a house and you could just figure out everything that ever happened to that plot of land if you spend enough time.
You'd have to spend a lot of time, but
yeah.
It's like a specific thing too. I think Northeast was trying to find pictures was much more difficult than other areas in the city, because there were working class people and sometimes poor people. There weren't as many photos, right? I mean, trying to find extant photos compared to if you're trying to take pictures or get pictures of downtown or
downtown
Park Avenue
so
or something, in the 1890s and 20s.
I know so many photographs in Northeast were just like little teeny tiny pictures that had half burnt or faded or looked like they'd been folded up many times and then they scanned them. And so, finding the pictures was difficult.
People don't think about history until it's gone sometimes, they're too busy living their lives and trying to get ahead like a lot of these people did. They worked and worked and worked for their kids, so the next generation could have it better. And so there probably wasn't as much time for documenting it, and who had a camera, right?
Any big surprises? Say with the Northeast guy, since that's the neighborhood we're in now.
Right. What would be your biggest surprise? I just thought, there's the 1893, there's the conflagration, the fire here, and that went all the way up to, to where Botno is up there, Botno Library behind us. And then there's reports, I don't know if that's anywhere else, where it was threatening to leap across the river to the north too. So you always think about, history is what if. What if that had continued, and what if they hadn't contained it here? It would have been one guy dying of a heart attack. We were very fortunate no one died, actually.
I have to say, it's like pretty much from right when me and Sherman first started going out, one of the things that Sherman would always do is we'd get in the car and we'd just drive all over the Twin Cities, and he'd point at every building and tell me the history of every single building we went by and the names of all the streets we were named after and who all the parks were named after. So a lot of this stuff I already kind of knew when we started doing it, just because he knew all of it and had already told me all of it. I think the biggest surprise for me is how few people know who Father Hennepin is, and based just stuff that our kids have grown up knowing because we're always giving them lectures about it.
They don't really like listening to us too much. Right? They're pretty bored with us. Hey, you want to go talk about a book? No, I'm not interested in that. I don't know.
Well, you may not have them in the house when they're 30 then.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. You got to encourage them to be independent, so whatever you're into.
Well, did you have parents who lectured at you about Father Hennepin and such?
No.
So how'd you get the bug?
yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I took history because I wanted to have a generalist liberal arts background where I felt like at least after I graduated from college I knew something at least. I guess I wasn't really concerned about being rich or getting a job in business or something like that, and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I wanted to feel like when I got a college, because in history you read and you write. I think I like reading and writing, so that's what I was into. And then it's like kind of and I took a lot of undergraduate. I took like a lot of exotic kind of classes and stuff, you know, through all over the world. And then it kind of dawned on me, because I never did take a Minnesota history when I was graduating. It's like, oh my God, I need to look this up and find out all this information before my library privileges, because I don't know if they still do that now, but back then I think it was 6 months or a year after I graduated I didn't have my library privileges, or I'd have to pay for them, and I think they were maybe like $50 or something, which seems like a pittance at this point, but you know, back then when you just graduated and you don't have any money, it's a lot of money, so I went to the library and I started reading, you know, as much as I could of William Watts Falwell's 4-volume History of Minnesota, and Theodore Blagan's History of Minnesota, and William Lass's History of Minnesota, and all this stuff, and trying to digest it, I guess. And it kind of goes back to, like my dad used to say funny things like that, because I was actually born in Stillwater, and then I came to the U, and then I just kind of stayed, but, you know, he'd always say, well, you know, people go on vacations. You go on vacations all over the world. He took us on vacations to Florida and to California and all over the country, and then you don't know anything about where you actually live, and that's kind of weird. And I thought, well, maybe I should do something with that and actually try to learn as much as I can about that, whether or not my daughter thinks that's ridiculous. But, you know, but we all try to find meaning in things. I find a lot of meaning in that. You know, there's kind of a connection when you're looking at history, seeing history. You feel connected to the past, I think. You feel like you're part of something bigger than you.
I had a moment like that. I'd always admired the folks who rescued refugees, especially who rescued the Jews,
Right.
were part of the Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the memo that the brother of the guy for whom my street was named, Washburn, was as big a rescuer for his time as anybody. Actually rescued Germans from the French. Some people think he was the guy in gratitude for whose actions we got the Statue of Liberty. Also just sort of incidentally won the Civil War by, you know, recommending to Lincoln that he hire Grant. But, you know,
Right.
here's a huge, you know, sort of, who can you admire?
Right.
It takes but this is as close to an American I can admire as anybody I know. So that's kind of my story about, you know, the sort of finding meaning on my street in a sort of funny way. Have you found things to admire? Things to love in your neighborhood and in the history of the Twin Cities?
Oh gosh, I love the idea that when the Twin Cities were being planned out, that so many parks were integral to like just the very, very beginning. That like in Minnesota, or not Minnesota, but Minneapolis and St. Paul, well, especially
Minneapolis and William Shillard. Yeah.
Every single house had to be within 4 blocks of a park. Just the idea that this city was plotted that way, and it's like when you fly over the Twin Cities, it's so green. It almost looks like it's trees and there's houses hiding under them. And I love that. I love that much foresight was put into keeping this such a green area right from the beginning. Because, I mean, there's a lot of really ugly cities out there that are just concrete and buildings, and I love the idea that this was planned around the idea of parks. So I guess that's what I like.
Horace Cleveland, yeah, that's incredible. The park system from the 1880s, and they're still, they're still making efforts to totally realize it too. With the parkways on the river and stuff, and I know they're trying to do stuff with Northeast and with North also, with more stuff acquisition on the riverfront. So yeah, I think that's great. It's great foresight. I think that's one of the things that makes it such an excellent place to live, and also I think that's one of the things that you have parks as a hub almost. I always thought of it this way. Like my mom, she came from a farm family in western Wisconsin, and then married a man and my father and settled in Stillwater, outside the cities and all that. But she always thinks of the big city, and she worked here for a while at Honeywell and lived here for a while in South Minneapolis actually. But she always says, the big city and all that. But I always think of it as, because of the parks, it's almost like there's neighborhoods after neighborhoods. It's kind of like, it kind of breaks things up, and and they all have there's a little variation. Some, it's one area is like this a little bit, and some they have different, different arts, different, this is where the music is at. This is a neighborhood for bars, and this is a neighborhood for beautiful old architecture. I don't know. I think it's a lot less of the big scary city thing. I never got that boogeyman kind of thing. I always thought it's like, really beautiful and interesting, and you never know what you're going to run into. It's like, you always try. That's one of the things about getting older, is you get around and you see everything after a while. So then it has to be, so if you're in a car, you're doing that all these years. So that's kind of like the walking book, or, would have liked to write a biking book or something like that, but it's probably even half of the amount of sales of a walking book. But the way you see it has a big impact. If you're riding in a car, you're not going to see half as much as if you're walking or riding a bike. There's so much out there. It's like you look and go, what is this? You're always running into things like, I don't know. We were up at Socorro, right? We got the Polish up on Washington, Polish deli place, and got some stuff for food, and mostly for our daughter for school and stuff like that. And then I was driving around up a few blocks from there, and I went by, and I hadn't noticed it, but like one of the apartment buildings up there, not surprisingly, knowing the neighborhood, had been a Polish day school back in the day. And I hadn't noticed it because you're driving by in the car most of the time, and I think, I had noticed it on the bike, I think, the week before, so then I went to show you that, right? It's like, well, there it is. It's written in Polish on the side of the building. It's like Polish and English. It was like really crazy. Yeah. So you're always trying to discover something, and that's one of the, that's hard. So you have to try different ways of doing it. I think, because I don't know. It's fun if things are exciting, and you have to see things. See things anew, right?
Well, you've done these books. Do you go out for walks and study tours and so on for fun afterwards?
Oh, yeah.
There's always more.
Something new to see.
There's always more, and there's always like Northeast. I can't believe. I remember going to Holy Land and places like that, and getting a euro when I didn't have any money, like in college, after college, and stuff like that. It's like I never would imagine that Central, that formerly New Boston area, the incredible diversity they have there. It's incredible, and I think it's great, because in the past, people had to work hard, and they were working hard, and lots of times, unfortunately, they had to work against each other because they were pitted against each other, because that's just the way things were set up. Now, I think we have all this, and it seems like everybody seems to, the arts are working with different communities and different people, and it's really exciting time if you're not afraid of just, being the only person that looks this way or that way going in somewhere, and just finding out, you know, I think, yeah.
So do you find your interests kind of sneaking over into ethnography, anthropology, geography? I mean, do you find yourself getting interested in the present and the future and the changes and sort of interviewing the people who are making the history that they'll write about in 100 years?
Yeah, you'd like to. I mean, there's these oral history projects that Minnesota Historical Society has, and the Riverfront Redevelopment Project, and it's online. So it's either you can read the transcripts, or you can listen to them actually doing the interview. So I mean, it's something, you know, similar akin to this, and I mean, that's incredible. The Riverfront Redevelopment stuff is, you know, like you got, I don't know, all the players that were involved in the redevelopment on all the stuff that happened on the riverfront that got us to where we are today. You know, post-60s, when it was falling down in 1965 when General Mills left and they had nothing pretty much going on up there, to now everybody congregates on the river, and the Stone Arch Bridge is the center of the area and all that stuff. And you can read about the architects that actually did this stuff, you know, from Donald Fraser to city councilman to Sharon Sales Belton was on there, to, I don't know, it's a wide range of different people. Really interesting.
So when you're writing a guide, like the Guide to Nordeast, how much of the present comes into that? How much of the current dynamic in a neighborhood gets into a book like that?
Oh, I think almost the whole last chapter is mostly the present.
Yeah, or leading into it, yeah. I mean, it's pretty brief, because it's a history, you know what I mean? But then, I mean, that's the hard thing, is in the process, and you have to kind of winnow things down, otherwise it'd be like a 700-page book, and that's, you know, you got a 40,000 word limit on that thing, and boy, we really had to work to stay within that. It's one of the hardest things, and you have to automatically determine what you want to do, and then you have to determine kind of, like, there's different strains that come up back and forth, and like one of the strains with this is that Northeast has always been ethnically diverse, which is really interesting, working class, and how that's changed over time, and how it's adapted, and then how some things are coming back, like we were talking about earlier, beer is coming back big time, and here we are in the Grain Belt, you know, brewing building right now. So.
I think one of the tragic things of the last 10 years has happened is all of our community newspapers have started folding up and fading away. And I used to love doing community news for all the, I don't know, a whole bunch of the little newspapers, because it's so fun to just go outside and see what's there and say, hey, that's new, and then call your editor up and say, can I write about this? It's new. And so I really miss getting to do that, because it's like history.
Yeah, the Northeaster is
ongoing.
about, you know, that's about it, really. And then Downtown
Journal.
We're at the angle, right? The southeast angle. If I took pictures there a little bit.
Bridge.
The bridge, yes.
So people are being carried along by history, but they don't know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't know that anything has happened before. You've done these things on the Twin Cities. Do you travel? Do you go to other cities? Do you travel?
We haven't done a lot of traveling lately.
No.
We've been too busy working, and then my daughter's now 12, so it's, I know I've been pretty busy.
Just thinking.
I like traveling. I like getting out. I mean, I don't know. That's what I always think too. Is lots of people go, oh, I wouldn't want to go there. I wouldn't want to go there. I mean, you could go almost anywhere, and if you're an interesting person, you can find something interesting there, I think. You just have to be open to thinking about it, you know.
It's funny because I actually got sent to California for a writing conference last month, and you know, it's like you never realize all the wonderful things you have here until you're away from the Twin Cities. Because I was up by the redwoods and it was really beautiful and everything. Couldn't find any restaurants that could compare to anything here, including the seafood restaurants. The community was like the writing community there was really insular and very tiny. And here it's like we have these wonderful, huge art communities and literary communities, and it's like we just, I don't know. There's an awful lot here.
Sometimes it's good to have perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you step away from it, it's like, wow, it really is really great back home.
So, do you have a sense of who your readers are? I mean, do you hear from them? Do you talk to them? How does that go with a book like Nordeast, Minneapolis?
I think we did like
How much
11.
publicity did you
We did like
get?
11 book events this summer, so we got to talk to a lot of people.
A couple weeks ago, we did Botanical Library, and I thought that was one of the best.
Yeah.
I really liked that. It was really good.
We did Center's Ethnic Market. That was good. Then most of the most of the Barnes and Nobles too.
Roseville was a good one.
Yeah.
Eat My Words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The local centers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard when you're writing so much because you really don't get to talk to people that often, because people always portray, like in movies about writers, that it's like this really exciting life and you go out and you do all sorts of exciting things and lots of parties and everything else, but really it's like you have to sit down and there's so much writing you have to do, and that's not a contact sport. I mean, you're there by yourself doing stuff.
Yeah, some people I think these days for a writer, it's not like the old days with some people where you just write. Now so much of it is kind of promoting and stuff, and I wouldn't say I'm really good at that, so that kind of limits us a little bit, because it's like, I write because I'm not a big talker, honestly, publicly, it's just like, I don't know, it's like, you write because I keep on editing myself, because if I'm talking now, I have to slow down to edit myself. Now, if I was writing, I would sound a lot better than this, so,
You sound just fine.
But I mean, I think that's why people get into the arts in the first place lots of times. I mean, it's a more fun way of communicating, like picking up a guitar and playing a couple chords, than it is, I don't know, understanding or something like that. There's something there, at least for me.
I'm kind of sold on the idea that you folks may have some of the best lives I've ever run into. I don't know if it feels that way to you.
Well, I've gotten to stay home with my kids the whole time they were growing up because of, like I said, my editing and indexing business and writing, and so I feel very thankful that that's happened. And we get our health insurance and everything because Sherman has a real job. So
hopefully you hope everything pays off in the end. It's like, I don't know, so you work and you're a certain kind of writer and whatever that is, and then maybe my daughter writes, and I'm not going to force her into doing anything. She should do whatever she wants, but lots of times people are their parents are semi actually, in the big picture of writing, probably we're semi-successful at least, and that's okay.
Yeah, we
maybe she'll be big
steady
or something.
income. We're not the millionaire writers, but we're getting by.
I mean, sadly, I think in the
lot of
arts, it's
people.
kind of like this. There's like a pyramid, and at the top there's like 3%, and they make 95% of it, and then everybody else is down there pretty much, And then the kind of in the middle are the people that can scrap by. But it's a good time though. I like doing it.
Well, we get to meet really interesting people
Yeah,
too,
right.
which is really nice.
Get to do nice things like this. This is fun.
I always, with creative artists generally, I always have this question or issue. I mean, I do video this way, and so far I have avoided learning what you need to learn to take it to documentary, because I can't imagine staying with any project as long as you have to stay with it to do documentary.
Right.
And when I interview actors and they tell me, you know, they have this show that they put up over a number of years,
Right.
especially one-person shows that get repeated for, you know, sometimes decades, and I think, how could you stay with one story that long? So, are you? I mean, and some people just tell me, you know, I can't do this. I can't be an actor because I'm easily bored. You know, I'm too easily bored. I've got to have new challenges all the time. How do you sort of settle the question of the size of the projects you take on? So that, I mean, do you find yourself in the last months of a guidebook or last weeks or something thinking, I wish this were over? If I don't never see another Nordeast house with special molding, it'll be too soon. I mean,
You know, I'd say the very end of a project is always the most exciting because you see it coming to an end. So it's not so much, oh, I'm so glad this is over. It's like, oh my gosh, it's almost over. And then you start getting like a little
you feel
almost sad.
You feel a sense of relief for about 3 or 4 days, and then you get bored and you got to do something else, and you're back to.
And closure is nice though. It's nice when it's done.
It's nice to get stuff done. It's nice to complete it. We're good at completion. That's important in writing, actually. I think some people have problems with that. So.
Yeah, I would say like with, Music Theory for Dummies is in its 3rd edition now, and every 4 years I start getting this sense of dread going, oh no, there's going to be another edition coming out soon. I'm going to have to relearn all of this stuff and write about it again.
So how do you, how do you think about your next projects and about choosing a project?
A lot of them just kind of shown up, honestly. I mean, as far as the nonfiction goes.
So yes, I'd really like to do that.
Yeah, we just say yes to everything.
Well, if it's good, yeah.
Pretty much. I don't think we've ever said no to anything.
Yeah. I guess we're interested people or something. I don't know. I'm interested in things.
Yeah. Poor Sherman, he comes home from work and I'm like, hey, guess what? We're writing another book. And he's never once told me, no, we're not going to do that.
I'm taking a nap. I'm done.
Yeah. And now you're kind of slotted into guidebooks, is that right? Or do you, or are there other sources of offers?
I don't know what we're going to do next. I think that's the other, because I'm doing, like I said, I'm doing a history of Stillwater. So after I did the Northeast, I'm doing that.
I think we might be working on another Walking Twin Cities edition next year, maybe.
Yeah, I'm usually still another walk-in. So
and we just have to check everything.
But yeah. Once we're done with that, I don't know, that's April that the next one is done, so I have some free time actually.
Yeah. So is the new technology kind of attracting you? I can imagine that with GPS, with the capacity of something like a phone to know exactly where you are and what direction you're looking, so to speak. The guidebook, the idea of a guidebook is shifting around a little bit. Have you gotten interested in that?
Not that much. I don't know. They might get ahead of me there, right?
Yeah, I know. We might have to learn something.
Yeah, I'm good. We're good at like, I don't know, being able to search sources online and stuff like that. But as far as I haven't. Your dad has lots of GPS and all that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of old-fashioned, crazy, know my directions kind of guy usually. And then know the plot and know the grid. And when you know that, you kind of know where you are and know how it's arranged. That usually works for me at this point. Yeah, you never know.
And what have you tried to pass on to your daughter? I mean, she may, reject the lectures and such, but What's coming down to her as the family legacy?
Hopefully work hard and you'll accomplish something.
Yeah.
I mean, and you just keep working hard until you accomplish something.
Yep, hard work, that's right.
That getting to do something like I said, we're not millionaires. We could probably make more money if I had a better job, or a real job outside the house, and Sherm did something else, but
hard work and persistence.
Yeah. But we get to do something with some of our time that we really enjoy getting to do and show something for it. So kind of hoping that she gets that too.
The kids will be kids. You got to let them do what they want to do.
Yeah, I know we have a 19-year-old,
like
and I keep telling him, it's like, it's okay to be, he's really good at writing, and I say, it's like, just because your parents are writers doesn't mean you have to say, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to find my own way. Just use your talents and do something like that too. There's no sin in doing the same thing that your parents are doing, or going away from what they're doing too. I don't know.
It's definitely not worth. You shouldn't be pushy with people though, because they have to figure things out for themselves. But you do have to do something. That's the biggest thing. Is just it might not be it's like, I don't know, how did I get on a history path? I don't know. I went to let's see, nobody in my family went to college. Oh, I guess my dad did for like 1 quarter because he went to Vietnam and then played cards or cribbage and quit. And I figured, well, I actually would like to have a college education and just have like at least a liberal arts base where I could actually write and read on a certain level and feel decent about myself in life. So then I went there and paid my way through, and here we are, I guess.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the academics I talked to at the university are history folks. They'd be gratified to know, I think, that the department has worked this well for anybody.
Yeah, I would have liked, I would have liked to went on and got a PhD, but that wasn't in the cards, kind of, from my background. It's like, I don't know, can I go to school for another 4 years minimum? But lots of those guys end up being there for 8 years. And granted, back then I graduated because I did masonry, cement work since I was 16 years old. I did heavy work that paid well, so I could pay for school. But I don't know, so I never got a PhD, and I don't know if I would have even got into such programs, but I kind of wanted to at the time, but now I'm old, so I'm going to have to be a folk writer or something like that, I guess.
Well, you're just not old enough. Yeah. That's your problem. Because when you get to be someplace around 60, it all becomes free.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And you can, a guy walked at 80 with a PhD in classics 1 year. So these things happen.
Yeah, that's good.
And you don't have to have $1 million in loan debt.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Now, as we've talked, you've mentioned creative projects, fiction and poetry projects and so forth that you've played with, or at least done first drafts on. How does that interact with this other writing?
Oh,
is it like on a different track?
No, I think it's great.
That's fun. Yeah,
it's fun, and what it does is it's good process related stuff. So you get yourself up to speed basically in doing, as far as you just get a sense of being able to put out work. You know what I mean? That's basically what writing is you do have to get it done. So you're not going to end up being a person that screws around with a sentence for a week and a half. You just have to use your mind and go somewhere, and then you do that. That's what you do when you're done, is you do the tinkering. And when the tinkering gets to the point where you're moving stuff back to where you moved it before, then it's time to stop. But yeah, so you get up to speed, typing, writing, thinking, all that kind of stuff. You have to, it's like practice. It's like exercise or whatever. So I think it all ties in. There's no way you could do these projects on some of the schedules we had if you didn't do that, I don't think.
Plus, when you're doing something like this, it's like there's so many other things you're thinking about while you're writing too, and you can't use it in there, so you can use it in a fiction project, or you can use it in a piece of poetry or something when you're done.
Right.
So it's like you can use all of that other information and things you were thinking about and get it out of your system and not just lose it.
Yeah. So does the fiction and poetry have an audience? Do you read it to each other? Do you collect the kids in the living room and read them your novel, or how does that go?
No. I just send stuff to magazines myself. That's part of my routine. Every day I send stuff to a couple of magazines, and I usually get published in a couple hundred magazines a year. So that's what I don't like to read in front of people very often. Although once
you've been doing it more lately, though.
Yeah, you get a poetry book out, and suddenly you have to go out and you're expected to read them. So that's something I have to get used to doing.
And with things like novels, is there any audience for that? Or does it just live in the drawer?
You know, the novel I had come out earlier this year came out at the same time as this.
The same week.
The same week as this book, and then the same week as the new music theory for Dummies. And so I had to put all. Yeah, it's like I can promote one book, so I just promoted this book, and so the novel basically didn't get any attention at all. But it looks nice, and I'm happy it finally came out.
It was very old.
I wrote it when I was 20 and finally found a publisher for it. And so it's doomed to die, basically.
So there's no hope without promotion for these things?
Not really.
And that was a small enough publisher too.
Yeah, for small publishers you have to do a lot of promotion, and it was a really small publisher.
And that means like book tours, like national tours or local tours?
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
A national tour would be nice. It's kind of hard to do when you have an 11/12-year-old at home or younger. Kind of stuck doing stuff in your neighborhood. That's about it. It'd be nice someday to get in the car and drive across the country and just do the store-to-store tour, though.
You can write it off too.
That's right.
That's awesome. So you can go on vacation places and hang out places and go see friends that moved away 20 years ago that I don't get to actually see anymore.
Now, some people, even with novels, are finding that blogging is the way to go. You reach a big audience and you don't have any overhead. Is that appeal to you?
I think I'd rather use that time writing something fun. I don't know, sitting there. I've tried blogging before, like years and years and years ago, and it's just, I don't know if anyone actually read it or not, and it takes just as much time to write that as to work on like a short story, and if I have to pick, I'd rather just work on the short story or whatever else I was doing.
So the problem is that you don't get the kind of response that makes you want to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is too is like I do write poetry and fiction because I love to do it and it's fun, and I don't really make much money when it gets published or anything like that, but I've written other books that make $20,000, $30,000 a year, so those are the ones that, I mean, those books pretty much carry everything else I do. So I'm perfectly comfortable with whatever money we make on royalties, and then I can just do things that I like. You can have some fun
time. It's kind of like being a farmer, and that's how I explain it. You get your dairy business to kind of run things, and then maybe, I don't know, you can do some hogs and and some young stock and sell them on the site or something, and that's your poetry and your creation at this point, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you have the non-writing day job. Is there any thought that maybe someday you'd quit that?
Oh yeah.
Every day.
Every day there's that thought. No, I don't know.
Maybe, not specifically, but what kind of stuff do you do as your other job?
I work for the United States Post Office. Downtown Minneapolis and automation.
I see. And so it's really different.
Yeah, it is really different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the most exciting stuff. I mean, as a teacher, this is what makes me think it's all worthwhile that people get lives like this at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess.
And that all these, you know, they use stuff. They actually, it's really exciting. Thank you for taking time to talk to me.
Thank you for having us.
Great time.